Tanika Nicholas, Tanika Nicholas. My title is Justice Reform Partnership Strategist for the Southern Center for Human Rights.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to do this interview. I promise not to hold you too long because I know you have a busy schedule just like I do. So I want to kind of start out. I'm pretty sure you may be aware, but I just want to find out if you were aware that slavery is still legal in the United States.
Well, I'm gonna be real. We be honest with each other. Wally said we're gonna be transparent in this space. And so for myself, I thought I was all educated, right? I thought, slavery was abolished, right, from the 13th Amendment until I met you and I saw you wearing these T-shirts. And in these T-shirts, you had all this fancy stuff, but you had some things highlighted and crossed through and underlined. And I didn't know what that meant. And so I went and I did my own research. And so really up until probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I really understood what those things you had underlined and struck through, what that actually meant for someone like myself, who's an impacted woman. So to be honest, up until 3 months ago, I did not know that 13th Amendment did not apply to someone like myself.
Okay. And a lot of folks don't know that exception.
Right.
In the last interview I had, Dr. Anderson said, hey, if you're going to end slavery, you just end it. Don't try to find loopholes and ways to still use it, but try to basically reinvent it and put it in a different way. So, and it was up until I really started doing this work that I was like, what are y'all talking about? Slavery ended. Lincoln freed the slaves in 1865. And then it wasn't until 2 years ago when I found out with Juneteenth that even 2 years after he did that, slaves in Texas were still in bondage. It took 2 years to even get to Texas for them to do that. And that's why they celebrate Juneteenth. So we're all learning in this space, whether it's learning how to use new languages, how we refer to ourselves, and more practices and things like that. So you're not by yourself, because I was one of those people too that was like, what are y'all talking about? But I never paid attention to the actual exception that says unless for the conviction, for the punishment of a crime.
Right.
So literally slavery is legal if you got a felony and you locked up, and that's just awful. So thank you for that transparency and your honesty for that. So what is your idea of slavery, and how do you think it actually compares when we're talking about today's mass incarcerated individuals?
Well, when I think about the idea of slavery, I think about myself and I think about forced labor. When I think about slavery, I'm thinking about having to do work and not have a choice, having to do something without having a choice or a voice. And when it comes in terms of mass incarceration, I'm going to speak for myself, and just be very candid of someone who's served over 10 years, in a state prison. And I think about that time when I didn't have a choice, when I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and had to get up and do work without a choice, right? I had to get up and do what they call a work detail. And sure, they say you have a choice, but we know there's consequences to those things. And those consequences are being taken away privileges. And privileges could be, the things we hold dear to us, could be those telephone calls. It could be, privileges of buying the essential needs we need to go to the store for our personal items or to eat, or our personal tablets, the way we communicate with our families, video visits, being locked down. And if you're locked down and you can't be able to see your families, or you can't get out and make your phone calls. So that forced labor, during the time you don't know these things, right? You just feel like you're just doing time. But, as, for myself, who's grown and have done my time, and when I saw you with that shirt and I started to growing and becoming to my own, I'm like, what does that mean? So I started to go back and do my own research and started to think about, this is what I've done for 10 plus years for the state of Georgia,
without pay.
And all the services that I did, didn't have a choice. You go in and they say, well, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you're not looking at the amount of hours. When you think about it, we won't even go into, you work 8 hours a day and, if you work 32 to 40 hours a week and anything over that's considered overtime. But you don't go into thinking about when you're in an institution. Oh, no, they're not looking at that. They're looking at you go to work and you're working from sun up to sundown and you're doing these things. You may be off the clock from your detail, but then when they're calling you to say, hey, we need you to go work in the kitchen now. You've worked your regular detail and say, well, hey, we need you to go do this. You're going to go do it without questions asked. So those are what I think about when you talk about forced labor, because in your mind, there are consequences because you are the subordinate and there are consequences. It's that unspoken thing that, that, hey, especially if you're in a privilege, if you have a privilege like myself, I worked a privilege detail. As privileged detail are the ones they will say that if you're in a building and you're not in the field, so if you're
which is the same thing, when we talked about it in Wednesday, you had the house Negroes and then you had the field Negroes.
Right. So you want to keep that privileged detail, right? So you're gonna get on up and do what we tell you to do right now, because on Monday you can be out there in the field now, right now, Nicholas. You want to keep this now. You don't want to be out in the heat now, do you? So all those unspoken things that so those again, a lot of those things as far as forced labor and slave labor. That's how I see it.
And that was a great correlation of it, because a lot of folks they're not seeing it's not slavery. Y'all stop calling it slavery when in fact it is. It's just evolved. It just has a different face on it.
Right.
We're not in cotton fields.
Right.
And which they still are in cotton fields in Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi. But you think because something has been called a different name, even by trying to call it involuntary servitude, you try to make it pretty, and you just call it what it is. The plantations have been replaced by prisons.
Yes.
The master has been replaced by COs in the DOC. So it is still a plantation.
And you think about these institutions, and most of them are in these small rural towns. And if you take away that institution, you take away their economy. They're in these small towns, and these institutions run. If you take away the institutions, you take away the economy of these small towns. So that's employed, and most of these institutions are employed by family members, and on top of family members, they all work at the jail and the prisons in these small towns, and we work at these institutions. They staff, these institutions in these small towns by family members in the area. So it's just a trickle down effect again of the slave labor. And when you talk about plantations, they're strategically placed in these areas, in these rural counties and rural towns for a reason.
Yeah, thank you for that. So can you give me your thoughts or emotions when you see incarcerated people working on these jobs, particularly out in the heat or on the side of the road? What are some of your thoughts?
Well, when I go back and I think about myself, and before I answer that question, this is one of the things I think about. Because when I'm home now, I often try to be authentic and smile. And I'm like, how you doing, brother? Even though they say, oh, you're not supposed to speak and talk and all that old crazy stuff. But that was me at one point. I know what it's like to have, so I know what they feel, when they're out there doing these harsh details. Or if I see the women. So, because I was in a women institution, of course, the outside details, they're in these ditches and, they're cutting grass and they're dealing with the conditions of horrible conditions and not getting paid anything, right? So I want to go back though to what I did. And this is key, because for 10 years, I did a service for the state of Georgia. I helped educate many women, okay? I think about preparing these women as returning citizens, okay? If my job was good enough to give them an education, to give them a diploma certificate, to have them return into society, right? Not get paid a dime for that. So when I get home, now they're utilizing these same certificates, the same diplomas My education was good enough to educate them. But when I step out, I'm not good enough to get a job.
In that same thing that you were doing inside of the prison for free.
But these certificates and these things that they have, they have obtained and achieved were great. I was good enough to work for the commissioner, because that's what it is when you work, when you're in the Department of Correction. I work for the commissioner. When the commissioner comes down, they give us quotas. They say, hey, we need you all to push out 200 GEDs now. We need you all. The governor needs 300. We need y'all to come on out and get them out, right? That's what they do, because we all know it's a numbers game. So we're good enough to do that job, to make them meet their thresholds and their quotas, to get these numbers out, to educate individuals, to get them to the place where they need to be sufficient when they return. You understand?
Yeah.
Not getting paid a dime to do these things. However, when we get out and say, you know what, I did a wonderful thing working for the commissioner, who then is employed by the governor, because you all say we equipped to do these jobs, and we did a fine job doing them, but I can't get a job.
So therefore, I guess that kind of is a great segue to ask about the question that some people say, well, I support prison slave labor because it's a great benefit to the community and it teaches them skills and trainings. What good is the skill and training? Like you just said, that's a null and void statement if that skill and training that they're supposedly learning is not helping them get jobs on the outside. Right. What do you say to folks like that?
Right. It's ridiculous, because it was for myself when I returned and was out and I will get back to your question about the individuals that we see that are out doing this work on the side of the road. But to go into the fact to say that, well, what can you do? I job searched and I job hunted and I went on multiple interviews. And I remember I thought I had this job with the Career Center with the Department of Labor. And the job in itself was great, because the job in itself was to assist returning citizens, right? To give them the skills, resume building, all of these things. And it got down to it and it said, well, you will be a great candidate. However, you do have a criminal background history. So we're going to have some issues. And I said,
okay, so wait, let's say that again. This is a job.
Yes.
To work and empower and educate returning citizens.
Yes.
But you would deny a returning citizen that job, as it should be. Yes. That job specifically should be in this job description. This job will only go to a returning citizen.
Yes. But what they wanted me to do to come in to consult. What I figured out, yes, they wanted me to.
They love pimping our experience now.
And there we go, to consult. And I guess after the third round of just talking back and forth, and I just said, let's just be real and be frank about this. I said, I really think it's just very odd that the same amount of the individual group, the targeted group that you all want to reach, I represent that group, right? However, I can't be employed because of a criminal background, right? I have all the skill sets to do the job and able to reach this population that you all saying that you're not hitting and you're missing. Because again, you have targeted and things that you want to be able to assist with. And that's what we're talking about when you say, well, those people say, well, we have these skills, but what can you do? When you utilize them for years while you're in the institution. Again, you're good enough to utilize them while you're in the institution. Those skills are great to assist while you're there. Do those things, make money, push out the numbers you need so that the state looks great. Go out and give them the diplomas, assist them all. But then when you get home, you can't get employed. I want to ask the commissioner, I was good for 10 years to help and make you meet your quota. Why I can't get a job? Right? These same diplomas and degrees and things we assisted you all with, and it's not just for me, it was others as well. We was able to do this. We were good enough because that's what I consider myself an employee under the state of Georgia for those years. I was employed there. These are all certified programs we worked up under. And these people, and that they're successful. These degrees, diplomas, they took home with them when they were returning citizens. It's not no sham. This is all stamped with the state of Georgia, right? About good free time and labor. So I would like to know then, why am I not good enough to, or what good enough to get a job or to be considered to do that same type of work? So,
and as you say that, it relates the same thing, slavery, Harriet Tubman Day slavery. Right. When you say you had a Black woman who was good enough to breastfeed your white child, or you had a Black woman whose food was good enough for you to eat, or but she wasn't good enough for you to sit down and eat a meal with her.
Right.
So in a certain capacity, you're good enough when you're doing something that's producing a profit for us,
right,
but not something that is going to allow you to be of an equal status with us, or something that's going to allow you to become better than me, and certainly not get more educated. I mean, that's why they would, make laws that says it was illegal to learn how to read, right, and things like that. So I don't see how anybody could miss the correlation of indentured servitude, slavery.
That is what we're saying here. That is the basis of what we're saying here. Very important. Very, very, very important. When you go into the system, you get classified. You go through the classification process. They look at your prior skills of all things. They look at the type of work that you did.
You coming in as a profit,
Right. So
HR labor.
They're looking at your job skills. They're looking at they look at what type of jobs you have, your educational value. They look at all these things so they can fit you into this system, right? They say, okay, we're going to utilize this good free labor some more, this slave labor, because here go one. But however, for someone with my skill set, because they said, no, we've got someone who's got some really good work ethic here. So I was put in prison industries, and what prison industries was the sweatshop of it all. That's where we made that's where you made the men uniforms, the release things, the boots. So that's where we worked. We were there from 6 in the morning. We got up at 4 o'clock. We stayed in that warehouse in the conditions with no heat, in the conditions in the summertime with no air. The conditions were deplorable, but that's where we worked, and to this day, these ladies are still working in prison industries and not making anything to do this type of work. So, but they do that. They look at a degree of who has good work ethic. We want the people who are going to go in there that's not going to complain, who are going to go in there and push out these uniforms, going to push out these things. We know we need somebody that's going to go in there and work, basically. So that's what they're, that's how they do things. That's how they go and classify you to make sure we need workers to do X, Y, and Z. So, but that's how I get, my evolution. It took some years, to get to that aha moment of what this all meant, and like, okay, now I see, and then it took for me being a returning citizen also to see, for years, I was good enough to do X amount of work and work for the state. And I always say work for the good commissioners. And when they come down and, they want to see all the good work we've done, right? For them and for the numbers and for the governor. But yet when we return back out into society, there's nothing. And so when I do see, my brothers and sisters on the side of the roads and and for doing absolutely nothing, it does create and trigger some emotions, very much so. But it also reminds me, and I'm, for myself, I've never thought I would be at this platform to even have this conversation. I didn't think this was possible, And I'm like, wow, so there's actually a movement, so we can have this conversation now, because it's not
Exactly.
it's not
Exactly.
right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. Um, what do you think the benefits? They always talk about the benefits of prison slave labor benefits the community, when in fact it doesn't.
No.
What do you think are the benefits to the community in ending such an oppressive and profit-driven system? What do you think would be the good fruit that is produced once Georgia removes forced slave labor?
Well, once it's removed,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll be a wonderful thing once it's removed. I think, for one thing, I know that, and I believe, if I'm thinking about statistically, I think we're one of 5 or 6 states left that don't offer any type of compensation. If I'm not
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
if we,
When
so if,
people are wrongly convicted.
right, so let's see what that looks like. If we can change that, and let's say if there is a compensation, right? If we're working and we are working, we're doing work. We're
Mm-hmm.
inside and we're working, and we're doing a service, and that service is for the betterment of for citizens inside, and that's what we are. Whether we are inside or out, we're citizens, we're people. And that dignity and that humanity needs to be, that's the thing that sometimes people forget, that we're people, whether we inside or out. That's the basics of it. I think if we don't start changing that, we're gonna have a problem.
Mm.
So I think that if that happens, then that sense of dignity happens for the inside. I'm just a promoter for men and women on the inside, of what that'll do for folks on the inside and what it can do for them, for their families.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big advocate for change and reentry. I'm a big advocate of what that can look like. And it starts from the inside. It
Yeah.
starts from the inside, from folks and from people in there feeling a sense of pride. So whether you're working in a kitchen, yeah, it may not be the cotton fields in Georgia, but you got the kitchen, which is hot. You've got
The
the
laundry room.
laundry room. Y'all done did all of them. You got prison industries, you got outside detail, you've got the maintenance, so you've got people who work on the horse farm. So they're all there. I'm telling you. So to have compensation and to have a way to say I'm doing something, and I'm earning, making a living and earning what I'm doing and making a wage, it creates something on the inside of that person. So when that person returns back into the community, that's a change in itself. So
Yeah, and I think too, just like Lucy brought it up, that by actually removing that exception out of Georgia state law, no longer provides the state an incentive to lock people up. Right. The purpose of them locking people up now is strictly and solely, it's not for safety purposes, right. It's not to make the communities better. It is strictly solely based on, like you said, those small towns, right, to build their economy up, right, and to get money. Right. However, if it's against the law and it's no longer in there wouldn't be any reason for them to really lock people up, because right, what's the purpose of us locking them up? Because we can't make money off of them. Right. And you're gonna have so I think that would be a game changer to end the mass incarceration in Georgia. Right.
Absolutely. So it would change the outlook of the communities. It would change. That's when we're going to start seeing a decrease in these institutions. There won't be a need to keep building them. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay. Is there anything else you like to say regarding this issue and the campaign? And we're hoping that, we want to get more folks to join the Georgia chapter. A few states have already gotten it out of their chapters. 4 or 5 states right now, I'm told, are actually going forward with it. Going to be in their ballot. It'll be on Alabama's November 8th ballot. Okay. And of all the states, and like you said, the last Dr. Anderson said is Louisiana and Alabama and another southern state. That shocked him that of these southern states, they actually have it on their ballot to end slavery out of their constitution. And Georgia, a state that makes money not off just on prisons. They make money off the movie industry. They make money off everything. Needs to get with it. And
Yes.
we make a lot of money. A lot of incarcerated people here in Georgia make billions of dollars in products and services.
Right.
And the only people who are benefiting from it are the folks who got their hands in the pot,
Right.
who are investing in that. And it's definitely not the folks who are incarcerated, black or white, and it's certainly not black communities, because the communities are already broken up, but then individuals, when they come home, they can't even get jobs. And I know Lucy had pointed out that when you're incarcerated, you're still obligated to pay your taxes that you owe to IRS. You're still obligated to pay your student loans. You're not
That's
automatically
right.
deferred. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, how are you expecting me to pay this if I'm in a prison working and I'm not getting paid?
And not getting any type of compensation.
You know,
Nothing.
you can't unionize when you're incarcerated. If you die or get your limb cut off while you're down in that hot laundry room, you're not compensated.
Right.
There's some article that came out several weeks ago about a guy, an incarcerated person who was fighting firefighters in South Georgia and ended up getting burned so bad he literally was hanging on for dear life. And the fire department sent him a bill. Sent him a bill. I'm out here helping you and your people in your community fight fires, and you got the nerve to say you're not going to pay for my medical bills.
Right.
So at some point, it's just about people and then for us to be in the middle of the Bible Belt, the middle of a state that says we believe in the principles, basic principles of what our Savior says, that we should show mercy and forgiveness and kindness and humanity and love our neighbors. That how we treat people like this.
Right.
And we're comfortable with it. We're comfortable seeing people taking out trash out.
That is what I'm saying, Walisa, that where is the humanity? And, only thing I just want to leave you with is that I just thank you for just offering this platform. I see you on the side of the road. Sometimes you by yourself. And I'm like, she don't even do herself on the side of the road. Please get off the side of the road with this stuff, but you're out there, you're doing this work, you're out there, you're saying the things that and be honest, the things we want to say and we just don't say, or we don't have the courage to say yet, So you're giving us that platform to make it okay. And you're giving us that beginning to say, let's start these conversations. And I was being totally honest when I said 3 months ago, when I saw it on your shirt and I see it behind you often, behind you when you're on your Zoom meetings. And I'm like, well, what is this lady talking about? What's going on here? And so, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. I mean, it's one of those things, you learn. And this is, again, what incarceration does, and we don't learn these things. And and so we have to continue to have these conversations. And I just appreciate this opportunity. So that's all I want to leave with you.
No problem. Thank you so much. And that was the whole motivation. Even with me starting my t-shirt line, Beautiful Pride, was to spark conversations. And the one that I have that says, end slavery in Georgia, you'd be amazed at some of the nasty looks I get, but then how many people will actually stop and say, slavery ended in 1865. And then they'll say, let me finish reading your shirt. And my shirt says slavery did not end in 1865, because of the exception. And then I just went to the store to grab me a couple of grapes and some light bread. And I'm standing there for 15 or 20 minutes talking to folks, and then people hearing the conversation. And so to actually educate people. So when they see my t-shirt that says end mass incarceration or end solitary confinement or things like that, they get to spark those conversations that even people who are not bold enough to do that or brave enough to do that, you wear the shirt and the shirt will speak for itself.
Yes, it will.
And so that has been the greatest relief or the greatest thing of why I started that t-shirt business, to spark conversations on reproductive justice. Or if you're a Christian, be bold and be faithful in wearing what you believe. And that was one of my biggest things. And since, we have 9 different collections on that page, one of them is a faith collection, but one of them is the human services and social justice collection. And when you hear stuff and you're wearing this stuff, like the one I have with the word felon on it with the no sign, I get a lot of people ask me about that. And they'll say, well, what that mean? That's the no smoking sign. Well, this is the no felon sign. That is not my name. That is not what you call me. We are not
Right.
felons. And so I
Right.
get to educate people on the purpose of using humanizing language. And
Right.
Dr. Anderson said it perfect in his last one, that when you go for so long, he said when he used to work in the prison system, he used to tell his students when they thought, kind of, come here, inmate, come here, convict, don't respond to that. That's not your name. You tell them to respond to your name. And he said he would talk to a CO. When you leave here and you clock out of this prison, when you go home, are they calling you CO? No,
Right.
they're calling you by your name. Call these folks by their name. And so there is power in the name, and that I think that also relegates when we're talking about people being slaves. People just get into that, and just that whole dynamic. I didn't really realize it until I was watching a movie last night. I think it was the Harriet Tubman movie with her escaping and helping folks get out. How the black man was doing everything he could to help them catch her. And I think of
Right.
that same mentality when you have folks in prison who are in these privileged details
Yes.
will gladly and happily snitch
Yes.
on the other folks who are not doing something. If you're inside and you're doing
Yes.
something privileged and somebody didn't bring their books to you, or you
Yep.
supposed to bring your uniform,
Yep.
now you want to go and tell a guard
Yep.
because that person didn't bring the uniform to you. And you wonder where that mentality comes from. And I think about it, well, that's the same thing the house Negroes did. They
Yes.
would be the first
Exactly.
ones to tell on when a slave, a field slave, would be the
And
first
you
one
know
to
why?
run.
You know for what?
Why?
A pack of color pencils and some markers.
Well, explain that.
Oh, okay. Because you know, in the institution, you got your contraband, right? So if you feel as if that you can snitch, you get you an extra pack of colored pencils and some markers.
What?
Oh yeah, colored pencils and some markers to do some activities, or you might get you a couple extra journals you can go back and sell and get you some extra stuff. Oh yeah, you might
Ain't
get
that
you a
bad?
couple. Oh, absolutely, you can get you a couple kickbacks. So that's the realness. That's how we do it. So
That's awful.
it is. You sell it. You sell out for some color pencils, markers, and some journals, and that's just how they do it, But you don't switched over now.
Oh, I haven't switched over.
Okay.
I'm just still looking at you as if I can still see you. I don't know what's going on with this computer.
All right. Well,
But I appreciate you, and definitely thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight. You inspire me. You speak so very well. I be thinking sometimes when I be seeing you at work, and they speak so well. And Walisha,
we love it.
I'm working on it.
You don't have to work on anything. We love it. I love it, and you inspire me, and you have given me so much to come out of my shell to just be authentic on a lot of different things, and to help guide me, in this process. And you've been a great leader on that. So I appreciate that. So
well, thank you. And when you
so
get a chance,
I'm looking forward to the finished product of. When will we expect to get something or finish?
Well, hopefully with this, it's going to be given to the videographer, and she's going to have 2 to 3 weeks to edit it. And hopefully by the first week in November, my birthday is November 1st. So I'm hoping by the end I'm hoping by the end of November, we'll have it. And it will be cut to the point where we're going to have several versions. One will be long enough for a commercial.
Okay,
that is the ultimate goal, and to be able to share on social media, to be prepared for kicking off our campaign launch, hopefully in January, February. And so I'll definitely make sure I send you that. Of course, you'll have a copy of this video and the other videos that we may have on our YouTube page as well. And I know you're super extremely busy, but we would love to have you join the Georgia chapter. All of us are not in Atlanta because that's the only chapter we have, but it's open to anybody that's in Georgia who wants to do the work that we're trying to do. The membership is free. We meet once a month virtually, usually the third Monday.
Okay.
And starting January, we're going to start ramping things up and amping things up. So we'll probably be going to twice a month come January. But this is going to be a concerted effort that is going to need people behind it to really get it changed. And I know we can always say, let's just pay them instead. But I think that's something that can always be changed. But I think by changing the Georgia law is a little bit more permanent. Absolutely. And so that is the goal. And this is one of the focuses that we're working on at the Georgia chapter. And we have different campaigns we will be working on, including prison conditions. We're going to be coming for other stuff, free phone calls, probation and parole. So we just, with our capacity, we're just working on one thing at a time. Until we can get more chapter members and more active chapter members, but we welcome folks. And then we have a website.
So you will send that to me, or?
I sure will. I'll make sure I send that to you as well. And we do have a website. It's All of Us or None Georgia, and Georgia spelled out. allofusornonegeorgia.org.
Okay.
And you can just go there and complete the application. And when you do, let me know, because the applications go to the national chapter in California. So I don't actually see them come in. But just let me know, hey, Walisha, I did apply for membership, and I can make sure I send that email out to you and let you know what we got coming up.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
I'm stop recording. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right.
And just send that link to me.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.